Starshines Tangent Spinner here, spinner of tangents and ranter of random. I am back with part 2, chapter 3 of WebMage. Now, when we left off, Ravirn had made it through the magical picture portal. He had somehow managed to make it into this fairy world based on something about the painter's idea of fairy being in the magic of pollution and a horrible metallic bullshit. I don't know. There was a beer can fairy ring, which will be important later, I know, so remember that. But there was a vegetarian troll healer they somehow managed to find. Him and Melchior. And then he has happily passed out after drinking a drugged soup that apparently looked like antifreeze meets Dawn dish soap and tasted like bananas and cream. And in that, he was having after being passed out from the drugged soup stuff, we're in the middle of his flashback to when Atropos contacted him about her spell to destroy free will. And that is where we left off in some very fantastic descriptions about the three fates and how fate has no humanity. And really, really nice. And, he'd gotten trapped in her gaze, so you know the eyes are the windows of the soul, and there's no humanity in the fate's souls. Soulless sons of bitches. Anyways, he'd gotten trapped in the eyes of fate, and finally she blinked and released him, and then right when he almost recovered, she started to speak, type thing. So that's where we left off, and that's where we're picking up again. So, without further ado, let's continue. Then she spoke again in the clear, inhuman voice. "You've grown in stature since the last time I saw you, nephew mine." As she spoke, bubbles rose from her mouth and drifted slowly upward. It was distracting. "Thank you," I replied. "I've been making sure to eat my Wheaties." I'm not certain what impels. I don't know why it says impels. I think it means compels, but impels. Is that even a word? Impels me to make such statements at times like these, but fortunately Atropos is utterly impervious to sarcasm. "I am particularly pleased with how your education has progressed. Lachesis has chosen an excellent course of study for you. With a little judicious pruning, you may yet grow into a credit to the tripartite house of fate." Gosh, with all the possible destinies out there to watch, you've been keeping an eye on mine. I'm touched. I hadn't realized you cared. "I don't," she said. "Not in the sense you're implying. I see all of those destinies, Ravirn. Every last one has to pass into my hands eventually. Even yours." She made a snipping motion with her fingers and smiled. I felt as though someone had just injected about 1,000 cc's of liquid helium directly into my spinal column. Time to change the subject and tone. I bowed deeply from the waist. "But I've been forgetting my manners, madam. I was so startled by my appearance here that I failed in the proper courtesies. Pray forgive my rudeness." "Think nothing of it, nephew mine." "Thank you, madam. I assume you have some service you desired of me, or you wouldn't have taken such drastic steps to assure my attendance on your person. Speaking of which, I had no idea that could be done. However did you manage it?" "The how really isn't important. Let us go directly to the why." "As you would have it, madam." "What may I do for you?" "I am discontent." "With what?" "Chaos. The state of the balance. Fortune and her ally Discord have grown too powerful. My sisters and I too weak." "I doubt that there is much that I might do to help you, madam." Taichi, Tyche, Teach. I'm gonna call her Teach. "Teach and Eris are far beyond my humble powers," I said, using the goddess's proper names. "I know that, silly boy. But they are not beyond mine. Or, at least, not entirely. I have a few thoughts on how to redress the imbalance." "Calkin!" She snapped her fingers and a squat, menacing shape slid into view. Her web troll. Mainframe supercomputer 1 minute, ravening carnivore the next. He was big for the breed, almost 4 feet in height and more than that in width, with skin the color of old bone. Massive shoulders led to an ape-like arms. His wrists were as big as my thighs and hung on a level with his ankles. Broad, spade-shaped feet sat on the end of legs so short it was hard to tell whether he had knees. The glare he directed my way suggested he was assessing my potential nutritional value. In any other company, he would have been terrifying. With my great-aunt to measure him against, I found myself wondering how much I might be able to get for the ivory of his 4-inch tusks. He extended one thick, 3-fingered hand to Atropos. On his palm lay a slender crystal, an 8-sided cylinder with about 2 inches long and half an inch thick. It was a green beyond emerald with the glints of gold in the depths. "What is it?" I asked, though I had a suspicion. "I call it puppeteer," she said, picking it up. "It's an extremely sophisticated spell embedded in a memory crystal." She tossed it my way. It tumbled slowly through the clear fluid, and I was able to catch it easily. Closer inspection revealed that the gold I had seen from a distance was an incredibly complex, 3-dimensional latticework running like a tracery of veins through the body of the stone. "It's beautiful," I said. "I know you were without peer as a coder of spells, madam. I hadn't realized you were an artist as well. This is magnificent. I've never seen anything so intricate." "Lamentably beautiful is all it is at this current time." She sighed then, and it seemed a very strange thing to hear Fate sigh. "There is a flaw in the spell, one I haven't been able to find." "I think I begin to see." She nodded. "I think you do." "Lachesis reports of your growing abilities have been quite glowing. The independent corroboration I've gained as you hover around the edges of my security implies that she is not far off in her estimate of your skills. You want me to find the flaw. I do. How do my grandmother and Clotho feel about this?" I held the gem in front of my eye and peered through it at her. "I haven't discussed it with them, but I think they will see the value of my ploy once it's in place. Free will is such an inconvenience." She smiled coldly. "You should see good value as well. With a tighter grip on the reins of destiny, I shall be able to reward you quite handsomely." "That does sound nice," I said. Actually, the thought of what Atropos might do once she'd gutted the concept of free will was a waking nightmare. But I was dancing on the cliff edge, and when I looked into the gulf, I couldn't see the bottom. I had to be very careful if I didn't want this to be my last conversation. Though she couldn't cut my thread arbitrarily, there were more straightforward ways she could make an end of me. Checking the time. "Good, then," said Atropos. "It's settled. Actually, I'd like to have a brief word with my grandmother. Of late, she's been most critical of how I've been using my skills and time. I shouldn't want to do anything like this without getting her permission first. You understand, I'm sure." I handed the stone back. "Don't try my patience, nephew. You'll find it isn't very deep." "I would never try your patience, madam. I am a wiser man than that. But I must give my first loyalty to my grandmother. So, if you'll excuse me, I do have midterms to study for." Pause while I get the next video in 3, 2, 1. Be-doop. Okay, we're back. She made a grabbing gesture, and seemingly from nowhere a glowing strand appeared. She strummed it lightly, and my bones vibrated like a plucked harp string. I realized she was holding my life thread. It made my skeleton itch. It would be a shame if I had to tie this in knots. There are many things worse than death, young Ravirn. Remember that. I'll let you go this time, but only for a very little while. You will help me." I bowed again. "In whatever way I feel I can, of course. Weasel words won't help you, nor will my sisters. I am not yet ready for this to reach their ears. Since you have spurned me as Cassandra spurned Apollo, I think I will give you something of the same gift he gave to her." She whistled a long stanza, harmonizing with herself. It was in a hex Rather, it was in hex rather than binary, and faster than anything a web goblin could do. I felt the spell reach out and tie itself around my mouth and voice. I wasn't able to make out 1/10 of what she put into it, but I didn't need to. I was familiar with Cassandra's story. Apollo had given her the gift of true prophecy, with the caveat that no one would believe a word she said about her visions. While Atropos would never give me the gift of prophecy, binding my words so they wouldn't be believed when I spoke against her was completely in character. I bowed in acknowledgement of her cleverness. Very nice. You've closed my mouth most effectively, madam. As I spoke, I felt a sensation in my lips, like the tingling of a limb that had gone to sleep. Her smile broadened. My goodness, she said. I know what I've done, and yet when you say it, even I have a hard time believing it. How marvelous. Isn't it? I replied. I applaud your inventiveness. The tingling came again, but worse than that was the sarcasm I heard in my own voice. It was so thick that I didn't believe me. Atropos had just put a sharp kink in the strand of my life. Goodbye, nephew mine. I'll see you soon, I trust. She waved her hand dismissively, and I felt myself fading into nothingness. Ooh. Alright, so that was the end of chapter 3. So what we found out is Lachesis and Clotho, the other two fates, have no fucking clue what Atropos is doing. So they have no idea right now that she's trying to get rid of free will, or at least at the point of when she was telling them. I don't know if they've talked afterwards. Honestly, I find it a little bit hard to believe. Maybe Clotho I can see because her thing is creation, like it was spoken of in last video earlier in this chapter. Hers is creation. She's like, she brings forth the idea, but she doesn't see it fully formed. Lachesis is the one who decides how long you live, where your destiny goes, what path you walk. I really don't think that she has no idea of what the fuck is going on in some way, shape, or form. Just because, like, even reading the, like, I read this back in, back in, like, 2010, I think. Something like that. I was still in early high school when I read this series. But even knowing the main plot points type thing of what is, I really don't think that Lachesis had no idea of what the fuck her sister was doing. But hold on, I gotta cough real quick, guys. Sorry. But yeah, no, so we found out that Ravirn can't tell anybody what's going on. So he can't warn people. It isn't just about how people think he's just trying to get petty revenge for the assassination attempts Atropos is giving him, or the trash, or the breaking into her house, or anything like that. It's that he physically and magically is incapable of telling other people who don't know what's going on. I can't wait to find out what happens in Chapter 4, guys, so keep an eye out for that. We'll probably post at least Part 1 of Chapter 4 tomorrow, probably Part 2, because I hate leaving a chapter unfinished. But yeah, no, so we're going to leave it here. Tangent's going to spin on out. I'll see you guys next Let's Read. And remember, guys, you're all my sunshines. Alright? Tangent out.